your local video store card.
A comic book in your back pocket.
Games with no tutorials.
Music you had to discover.
And drinking water straight from the hose.
These are the things us millennials remember fondly. We are the Jennings brothers.
Join us after the streetlights come on
as we race our bikes from the top of the hill
right down memory lane.
Exchange those quarters because this podcast takes tokens.
Good morning, good evening, good night. Any of those, whatever time of day you're listening to this, we are excited that you're here. I'm your co-host Ryan with my brother Derek. You doing all right?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Doing good. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm excited about this episode.
Yes, this is your pick.
It is one of my favorite movies. We are doing E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial, and because we're doing it, I have brought and worn my E.T. socks today.
So the people watching are going to get a treat.
Yes, they are. So I'm going to put that right back on my foot now because my foot's getting a little bit cold. But yeah, I got my E.T. socks on today. So
excellent.
So yeah, let's talk some E.T. Released on June 11th. 1982. It was directed by Steven Spielberg. Did you know that this was... Let me think here.
So not to interrupt you, but 1982. So I was wrong last week whenever I said that this movie is older than both of us. It's only older than you. It's not older than me. I thought this came out in 1980, so I was wrong.
Oh,
1982.
Yes. Yeah, 1982. Yeah. So we're still hitting things in your lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there we go. So yeah. Anyway, E.T. If you haven't watched it, my goodness. Again, I know I say this every time, but where have you been in existence? But it's about an alien that comes down to Earth with his family, his people, and I guess you'd call them like the G-men, right? The government guys are kind of after him, and they're trying to they follow this spacecraft landing, and they're trying to get a good view, get a good look at these aliens and everything. The aliens get scared, they go back to their ship, they take off, but E.T.'s left behind. And
it's the original
he's
Home
trying
Alone.
to get away. The original Home Alone, yes it is. So he's trying to get away from these guys, ends up befriending I guess you could call him the hero of the movie, sort of, Elliot. And Elliot introduces him to his brother and sister. And really the whole movie is them, they're trying to hide E.T. from their mom and from the adults, and at the same time trying to help him get home. So yeah, classic movie. Came out in 1982. Before that, so I was curious, was this the first blockbuster, right? So
I know it was the first big VHS hit.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the home video. Was it VHS or was it? Did Betamax come first, or was it VHS?
Betamax was out at the time, yes, but this was one of those movies that helped cement VHS as the leader. This is the one that it was everywhere and everybody had it. Okay.
Yeah, I love that about those things. You remember when we were, well, I don't like to say we were growing up. It was 10 or 15 years ago. It was what was it, Blu-ray and HD DVD? They were having that battle, and Blu-ray ended up on top, and I don't know.
Everybody knew Blu-ray was going to come out on top.
Yeah.
When you're
Microsoft
when you're
didn't.
10 times the storage size. No, they did not. They didn't think anybody wanted more than 1080p.
No, they didn't.
That was their problem.
So, yeah. So anyway, I was looking it up. I'm was this the first big blockbuster movie? I was curious. And actually, they credit that to Jaws back in, I think, 77
I could see
I don't
that.
know, it made a crazy amount of money. But this surpassed Jaws. You want to take any guess on how much this money made, or how much money this movie made?
I know it was the number one movie until I think Jurassic Park came out.
You're right.
Box office gross.
Yep. It was. So it made
the exact amount. I don't know.
Okay. It had a budget of $10.5 million. It made $792.9 million. So I'd say that's a success.
Wow. That is. Yes.
Yeah. Incredible.
By any measure.
Like you said, it wasn't surpassed until Jurassic Park. And do you know what like the underlying theme is between Jaws, E.T.? So Jaws was the highest grossing film until E.T. Then E.T. was the highest grossing film until Jurassic Park. After that, it's Titanic. But those first three movies, what's the underlying theme?
Well, you got Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, all directed by Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Solid gold. Anything Spielberg touched.
Or you could say
it was just
fear of the water, fear of space, and fear of the past.
There you go. Yeah. That's true. Perfect. So do you remember the first time you watched this movie at all?
I don't remember the first time I watched it. I do remember getting it on VHS. And I think I want to say, I haven't done any research on this, but I remember somebody mentioning that this movie stayed in the theaters for, I think, years, and it did not come to home VHS for purchase until I think like 3 or 4 years after its release. And so the first VHSs came out, I want to say in like the mid late 80s. And I remember getting one for Christmas.
I don't remember if I
it was released on VHS in 1988.
Okay.
So after being released in theaters in 82, it was 6 years until it came to home VHS.
So I'm curious about that, because maybe you have a little bit of a memory of it. I don't, because I just, home video was out by the time I was born. But movies back then, so I wonder if that's primarily how they would, it was like, especially even further back in like the 70s, because they didn't have home videos. So like, would they just have movie theaters that like picked it up and they'd be like, hey, the Godfather's playing over here again. Let's go watch that.
I don't know exactly how they did it back then, because that's before I really recall things, but I do know that movies would come back to the theater before home video, and they would do they would run them again in the theaters for like limited time special engagements and stuff like that. And or theaters would play older movies like in the summer during the day to get people in while they're, like kids are out of school and stuff like that.
Oh, sure.
And I think that's where the old Ben Bolt in town there used to run summer programs where they would do like 2 or 3 movies from like 10 in the morning until like 5 in the afternoon. They would do like 2 or 3 kids movies, and you could get like a pass. I remember as a kid, we get a pass for I think like $10, and you could go and watch any one movie every day for like the whole summer. It was crazy good deal. Or like pay $1 to go see another one. And
okay.
I remember Dad used to get us that. He'd get me that and the pool pass, and that's how I would spend most of my summers, going to the movies or going to the pools.
Oh yeah.
And
city pool. Yeah.
That they would run old ones, yeah. But yeah, I think that's how they used to do it, is they would run those old or they would rerun the movies, and but they would also run for longer. Like they wouldn't just go for like 2 months at a time. Movies would be in the theaters for like a year, 2 years, sometimes longer, depending on just how well it's doing. As long as people are coming and seeing it, they would, keep it in the theaters. Whereas now there's more of like a structure to it. And then I think the video home or VHS really disrupted that in the 80s whenever people started renting movies. And then even more so whenever movies became available for purchase, and you got more of this like regimented system of like, it's in the movie or it's in the theaters for I think 2 months, and then you'd have a month of being in the dollar theaters, and then it would go to rent for like 3 months, and then you'd have like maybe 3 to 6 months of it's on HBO or whatever premium cable channel there is, and then it'd be for home purchase after the rental run, like usually like a week after the rental run started, or later on simultaneously. And then, but then it would go to like, basic cable and all that after all that.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I remember like I do remember where there was a huge gap in between when a movie would be in the theaters and then when it would finally release. Like, they'd have Disney would always run those commercials of, available now on video. Like, yes. Wow, Lion King came out like 5 years ago. Now I can get it on video, That's
that was Disney's thing though. They would have the vault where they would take all the home video, like the ones that are on home video, and they put them back in their vault and make it more desirable whenever they did then re-release it. That was like something they came up with that really, drove sales. I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Yeah. Yeah, I remember the only movie that I really remember coming back around to theaters was Lion King. I remember it was just so big. I remember them, re-releasing it here at the Ben Bolt. But yeah, back to E.T., like the first time, I don't remember specifically the first time that I watched it. Like, where I was at or anything. I'm sure I was probably over at Aunt Kathy's, because they had all those, they had 1,000 VHSs over there. I'm sure that's where I watched it at. But I do remember being scared of not E.T., but
the G-Men
later on in the movie, when the
G-Men
captured E.T. What's that?
The government guys, yeah.
Yeah, the G-Men, yeah. Later when they had captured E.T. and Elliot, yeah, and they're in the house and they got those suits on and everything. And I was probably 4 or 5 when I watched it, and I remember it just completely terrifying me. And I didn't watch the movie again for a while because I thought it was a horror movie after that. At that point, watching it now, I'm like, well, that's laughable how I thought that was scary. But I guess as a kid, you've got some weird suited up guy in a hazmat suit coming at you. You don't know. Like, I don't know. I think that'd be scary to any kid.
That's funny. Allison was just telling me last night I wrapped it up last night because I watched it. Like I watched 30 minutes here and 30 minutes there over the week, and then I finally wrapped up the end of it last night. And she was telling me her story of how like one of the first times she watched it was at a sleepover with some friends, and she had fallen asleep earlier in the movie, and she woke up to the part where they're both in the medical tent laying there, and E.T.'s dying, and he looks over at Elliot and he's like whispering, Elliot. And she said she woke up to that and it gave her nightmares, and she could have sworn that the whole night she kept hearing somebody whisper, Elliot.
Yes.
So that's funny.
That is terrifying. Yeah, it took me, speaking of that, like how they're both dying, it wasn't until I watched it again recently. I think it was the first time I watched it with Harper, was about 4 or 5 months ago. It's the first time she'd seen it. And that is when I realized, I guess it's a difference between watching it as a kid and an adult. You pick up on things. So that's when I realized like E.T. is like an empath. and
Yeah.
you know, he's anything that like he's picking up on everything that Elliot's doing, and everything Elliot's doing is picking up on him. And I just never caught that as a kid. I was just like, oh, ET's got pneumonia. I think Dad told me. I was like, what's wrong with ET? He's like, oh, he had pneumonia, you know, or whatever it was. Which maybe I guess maybe he did. He was in that water.
Yeah.
The whole.
Well, I think they stayed out all night and they got sick. But like he's from another planet, so he can't handle it or whatever. And that's funny because like I kind of like I was watching it and I was wondering like how did they become connected? Because there's no like you know cinematic forced moment where they're like, you know, this is when it happens and it's definitive. It's just kind of like it happens and then all of a sudden ET's getting drunk in the kitchen and Elliot's falling over in class. I mean, it's just something that happened and you just kind of go with it. Like that's these 80s movies. Something happens and you just kind of go with it. And there was no real explanation to that. So I don't know what happened there.
No. The only thing that I can gather from that is that he had just they had just grown such a strong bond from being sharing, you know, life together for that amount of time. Because ET's whole, I mean, you know, obviously their whole race is these empaths, and they're like a collective.
He's a botanist,
like, hive group. Yeah, and that's how they, from what I was gathering, I did some research on the internet. And they're like a collective, like I don't want to say hive mind, but like, you know, they rely on each other to be able to survive. They don't communicate
through speech as much.
Yeah. So what was your favorite scene watching this? Was it different than like when you were a kid, or?
I don't remember. Necessarily having a favorite scene as a kid. I do remember like, because when I watched this movie as a kid, it was the late 80s. You know, I was like 8, 9, 10 years old maybe. And then I didn't watch it again until I think we had kids, other than like maybe like clips of it that were on here and there. So my memories of it are pretty foggy from being a kid. I do have like certain images that I remember very vividly, like E.T. the first time you see him grayed out in the water, and he's just all gray and everything. I remember that kind of stuck with me. Yeah. I remember the brother in the beginning, calling him a goblin, and that kind of stuck with me. But like, the fact that the parents were divorced, I don't remember that until even this last time I saw it. I really picked up on it. Like when we watched it with the kids for the first time a couple of years ago, I don't think I was paying full attention because I didn't pick up on the fact that the parents were divorced. I just, I guess I assumed it, or maybe I did pick up on it and then it became an assumption. You know how like that kind of works. But yeah, watching it this last time, I was like, oh yeah, they're divorced. That makes a whole lot more sense. And then it kind of like, it informed the way I looked at it. Like, is this movie kind of a movie about Elliot emotionally dealing with the divorce and his dad leaving them? And so then at the same time, this creature that loves him unconditionally comes into his life, and he just wants to keep it around like he would his dad that left him. But I'm not going to travel down that rabbit hole too much because I'm not eloquent enough to phrase it exactly without some much deeper thought. But that was something that I was thinking about whenever I was watching it this last time, is like how much of an allegory or how much of a parallel is there with that because their connection is emotional. Like E.T.'s watching that show that while Elliot's in school and all that stuff's happening, and towards the climax of that scene, E.T.'s watching TV, and there's a scene where the man kisses the woman in that old black and white movie, and at the same time you can see that connection between E.T. and Elliot grabs the girl and kisses her, like he stands on that other kid so he's tall enough and he kisses her. And I don't remember that as a kid at all, but I remember the frogs. I just don't remember that part at all. I remember him getting drunk.
We gotta save the frogs.
But save the frogs. Which, did Elliot grow up to become an animal rights activist, do you think, or an environmentalist in any kind of way? I gotta imagine he did.
I hope so. Yeah, so I noticed that too with like the adults. The first time that I had watched it, like you said, I didn't understand that his parents were divorced, and rewatching it, you can see with his dad. I guess it's presumed that his dad just left. Is that right? I don't think they actually outright say it.
He left for another woman and ran off to Mexico.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yep. So you can see how, especially with like the G-Man and all that, like Elliot and his siblings have like some serious trust issues with adults. Which I think is kind of why they're, trying to keep E.T., away from them. They're worried about what they're going to do to him. So like I remember my favorite scene as a kid was when E.T. when Drew Barrymore's character had dressed E.T. up in the the wig and the lipstick and all that stuff, and he's all, and when Harper was watching that with me, she busted up laughing at that scene because it's so silly to see him all like that and everything, and then Elliot's like, "What'd you do to him?" I just loved that so much as a kid. I thought it was so funny, but then as an adult rewatching it, my favorite scene is at the end when E.T.'s getting back on board the ship, and he tells Elliot, he asks him to, what's he say? He says, "Come." And Elliot shakes his head and he's like, "Stay." And it's like, Elliot, I feel like at that point has grown up, so to speak. And he maybe earlier in the movie, he would have just went with him. But, he's kind of come of age a little bit. He's like, I really need to stay here with my family. And, he's gained trust in, that guy. I can't remember his name. He was the head of the Keys. Yes. He's gained trust in him. And, but yeah, I just love that scene. And it's like bittersweet. And you kind of want to see, like, does E.T. come back at some point to visit him? I know, like, people have done interviews with Steven Spielberg.
They kind of did.
Kind of did?
Yeah, did you ever see that? You never saw the commercial they did a few years ago? They did a commercial for some, like, I think it was Xfinity. You have to look it up, the E.T. Xfinity commercial. And it's the guy that played Elliot reprising his role, and I'm pretty sure they shot it at the same house, or they made it look like the same house. And E.T. comes and visits him for a minute, and like it's just like him as an adult with like kids or something like that. Yeah, they just did it a few years ago. It was pretty fun. They did the same thing with Gremlins. They did one for, what was it?
No way.
I think it was Mountain Dew. They did a Gremlins commercial for, and they brought back the original Billy and Gizmo, and like Billy had a daughter, and like she's just like like so over the Gremlins, like she can't stand it. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to say my favorite scene as an adult, but
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my favorite was I think rewatching it, the whole movie's pretty even for me, but the one that I think really it made me laugh out loud was, if you remember, whenever they first declared E.T. as dead and they put him in the box, and Elliot's saying his goodbyes, and then he goes to walk away, and then the little heartbeat thing starts up, and he runs back over and he's like, "Oh my God, he's still alive," or whatever. And it's that moment whenever he screams like, like he laughs in excitement, and E.T. E.T. starts going like, what did he say? He said something like, E.T. go home, E.T. go home. And he's just like really excited and he's chanting it over and over again. And Elliot's like, shut up. We can't let him know you're alive. And he just like muffles his mouth and he keeps saying it. That part just had me rolling.
Yeah. Yeah, that was funny. That was a good scene. He like zips him back up in the the back. Yeah, it was. It's just, you gotta be quiet. Yeah.
And as much as Gertie was crying, like Drew Barrymore, which, you know, like she's a fine actress, don't get me wrong. But as a kid, like that's either a really commanding performance, or I want to believe that Steven Spielberg told him that was a real alien that they just watched die, because she was really giving it with the crying.
She was. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a good scene. I don't know how I'd forgotten about that scene, but I mean, you know, I've watched the movie. Like I just recently watched it, but you know. What about like the Reese's Pieces? Have you heard about this? So, you know, like Reese's Pieces were in the movie, you know, E.T.'s picking them up.
Yeah.
It was originally supposed to be M&Ms.
They approached M&Ms. M&Ms didn't want to do it.
And I don't know if like, is it Mars that owns M&Ms? I know it's not Hershey because Hershey owns Reese's Pieces.
M&M Mars.
But yeah. And like the deal fell through. I don't know who made that call. But deal fell through and they picked it up with Hershey with Reese's Pieces. And I guess like Reese's Pieces, like their sales jumped. Like, I think I looked it up. It was like 85% or something like that after the movie released.
I remember eating a lot of Reese's Pieces back then.
Oh man, they were good. I still eat Reese's Pieces, and I think about this movie every time I eat them.
I'll get them every once in a while.
They're good. They're good. And to me, that's just like a test.
Did Peanut Butter M&Ms come out of this? Did they create Peanut Butter M&Ms as a reaction?
Had to.
I gotta say, Peanut Butter M&Ms are better.
They are. Absolutely. I don't know what it is. Like the Reese's Pieces they're just a little bit sweeter. It doesn't quite taste like peanut butter, right?
Yeah, I would agree. The peanut butter, the Reese's peanut butters are the Reese's Pieces. It's a combination. I think it's mostly peanut butter with very little chocolate, whereas the Peanut Butter M&Ms, you've got like a BB of peanut butter surrounded by chocolate, and then the candy shell, as it's known for. And I think that's the difference. I think Reese's Pieces don't really have any chocolate to them. I think it's just the peanut butter. There might be a thin coating of chocolate in there, but it's been a while since I've had them.
Yeah, they've like changed the packaging and stuff on them. Yeah, it's been a while since I've had them too, but just the sales that they had off of that, to me, is just a testament to just the impact like this movie had on just everything. Like when it came out, like I mean, it was just such a huge deal. You know, and you mean you even rolled it into, so I don't think we can talk about E.T. the movie.
I got to bring it back. While you were rolling up that thought, I did a quick Google search, and Peanut Butter M&Ms were created in 1989. They were an answer to the Reese's Pieces, if you ask me.
Yes.
That's what the Google tells me. 1989, out of this world, M&M peanut butter candies were introduced.
Well, didn't you say that the VHS release for this was 88?
It was 88. That is true.
So I bet like there was probably a huge resurgence of consuming of, you know, Reese's Pieces or whatever, because the movie,
and M&M's probably took a dive.
Yep. They probably did. Let's do peanut butter. Sure.
Peanut butter, but they did it better. They did do it better. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe somewhere somebody will use AI or something to edit in E.T. eating M&Ms, peanut butter M&Ms. I don't know. It's like when you go back and you watch the first Spider-Man movie every once in a while on TV, and they'll edit out the Dr. Pepper can, and it's like a generic soda can or something. depending on what station it's on.
Yeah. So yeah, like just everything that this movie did, the popularity of it and everything. I like I was saying, I don't think that I can't talk about the movie E.T. without talking about the Atari game, because with me,
yes,
video games are so prominent in my life. Like everything revolves around games, so I've got to get a little bit of game information in there. But did you ever play the E.T. game?
I never did, but I would try it. I would play it. I would like to try it. Just see if it's as bad as everybody says it is.
It is. You're not missing much. But you should try it. You should try it just to try it. I remember I played it at Aunt Kathy's because she had an Atari that it wasn't long after. Yeah,
she had the Atari. I didn't know she had it.
Yeah, she had E.T. I remember playing it.
Maybe I did play it. I just don't remember it.
Because I didn't even know it was a game. Like, I remember I'd seen the movie several times, and then, like, she had found her Atari in the garage, like, the week before I went over there, and she was like, hey, I found this. Do you want to play it? I said, sure. So I'm, like, playing a couple different games, and then I see that there's E.T., and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize there was an E.T. game. Like, the box art and everything looked good on it, and which was no indication, as we know now, of how good an Atari game is going to look.
Good,
yeah. But like I get on there and I turned it on, and like you don't know what am I supposed to do? Like you got ET in the middle of the screen, and then you're walking around and you go from like screen to screen, and there's like these pits that you fall into. And there's no, like, some of the pits have stuff in them, some of them don't. And there's like these G-men chasing you around. Yeah. I remember playing that.
And like you're trying to find the parts to like make your communication device, right?
Is that it? Because I have no idea.
I thought I've seen like people talk about it, online and on YouTube and stuff. And I want to say they've mentioned that the whole point was you're trying to reassemble your communication device so that you can go home.
Okay.
But like every time you fall into a pit, you got to get out. And if the G-men catch you, then like you lose all your parts and you're basically starting all over. And I want to say that they're not visible, or is that a different game? I can't remember.
Anyways. I don't know, because I didn't play it enough. Like I remember I fell into several pits, and even as a kid, I was like, I played a lot of bad games as a kid and enjoyed them because I didn't know any better. And playing this was like, I don't understand what I'm doing. And I turned it off, and I think I put like Galaga on or something like that.
Yeah.
And played that. But yeah, I don't know. It was, well, the thing with the game, like, so it was released in December of '82. So the movie came out in what did I say? The movie in June. The movie came out in June, and it was super popular. It made all that money, and the company was like looking at like Atari. They were looking at like all these games. They're like, oh, we need to capitalize on this. So let's make an Atari game. The problem is they decided to do that, and they wanted it released by Christmas, so it basically gave them like a month window to to make this game. And if you don't know anything about game development, like today,
the problem is their developer said, "Yeah, well, I can do it in 6 months."
Yeah, it wasn't 6 months. It was 6 weeks, wasn't it?
The guy that developed it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was like 6 weeks, something like that. Yeah, it was like a stupid short turnaround time.
Sure, yeah. And like now, like if you're not familiar with game development, like today's games take years to make. And back then they could pump out maybe a game a year, but it wasn't like
12 months to 18 years.
6
weeks,
months. Yeah. And it wasn't like, a 6 week thing, but the dude said he could do it.
Yeah.
And you got to give him credit. He made a complete game.
He did it
in 6 weeks. Like, did you ever watch?
It's not a good game, but
did you ever watch that? Did you ever watch that documentary on Netflix, The High Score?
Is that the one about Donkey Kong? Or is that the one that's just about
No,
video game
that's-
history?
Yeah, it's about video
Fistful
game
of
history.
Quarters,
It's like
that's
a
the Donkey Kong
6-part
one.
documentary.
So that's the one that's about the history of video game. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah, so
Of course I saw
okay,
that.
so yeah, he's talking on there like he's saying like the whole 6 weeks, like he's driving in his car and he's coding in his head, like trying to get this game made.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they ended up making. Gosh, how many copies did they make? They made more copies of this game. They printed more copies than there was Ataris that had been sold because they were like, well, we think that everybody that owns an Atari is going to buy this game, and then people that don't own an Atari are going to buy an Atari because of this game. And it was
just so much hubris. So much hubris.
So bad. It sold. Yeah, it was so bad. It was so bad. Like people were like bringing the games back to the store, and it was so if you haven't, like, you should get on the internet.
Can you imagine if you could do that today? You could just bring a game back that you didn't like.
People try it. Like, I think people tried to do like returns for digital games, and I don't know, like they did it with like Cyberpunk or something because it was so broken when it came out. And I think they actually did end up getting people refunds. On
you gotta get lawyers involved now.
Oh, yeah. But you're right. I can't imagine it. Like, in my mind, when I buy a game, I'm in. Like, I spent my money, and for better or for worse, that money's gone. And this is what I've got.
It's a roll of the dice.
Yep. Absolutely is. So the Atari game was just.
Sometimes it makes the game better.
That's true. That's true. But man, what else? Like, I remember like they had stuffed animals of E.T. They had was it Pepsi that had an E.T. thing?
I think so.
I don't know. It was so big. Just all the different things that were out. Yeah. So did you notice watching this, or do you know? Are you familiar with the connection to Star Wars with this movie?
Yes, I am. And actually I marked that a lot because there was a lot. I remember seeing Phantom Menace and seeing the E.T. characters in the big room, the big, was it the chamber or whatever, in the theaters whenever that happened. And having discussions with, friends afterwards about like what it all means and everything. And then later on, I can't remember if it was Spielberg or if it was Lucas that came out and said that the two universes are connected and and confirmed it and made it canon and everything. But they are connected, which I mean, kind of, I feel like maybe not, but because Star Wars takes place a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So how time works and everything, relative distance and whatnot, I don't know timeline wise how that works up because it's not exactly like E.T. is referencing or talking to or about Yoda or vice versa. So there's that. But then there's the fact that the brother does the Yoda voice a lot, and there's the kid in the Yoda Halloween costume. So if the two universes are connected and Star Wars is a movie that's popular in the Earth that E.T. landed in, but also a universe that exists outside of the Earth, how does that work? Is it... Are we to believe then that George Lucas comes from a galaxy far, far away and is just telling stories from his childhood?
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, because I had seen the first thing that I had. Obviously, I noticed the Yoda voice, and then Elliot has like a Boba Fett toy, and I think he's got a Greedo. He's got some Star Wars toys. But then,
the toys.
Yeah, but the first thing that really indicates anything, I'm sure, had to have been just a throwaway joke that they put in the movie. But it's when they're out there trick or treating and they've got E.T. in that ghost outfit, And then they walk past the kid with the Yoda mask on, and he turns and starts walking towards him like he knows, you know, who Yoda is, or at least like who the species is, you know, or something.
He says home.
Oh, does he? I never caught that.
He says home.
I never did catch that.
Watching it last night, he says home, which makes me question, are the two species, the whatever species Yoda is, and E.T. from the same home planet?
I don't know.
I could see them being from Dagobah, like being botanists and everything, and being such a lush planet. Yeah. But we're not going to Star Wars this one up too much. I'll let you conclude.
Yeah, I never caught it. No, that's okay. Yeah, and then I think that they, because of that scene, it is the reason I think George Lucas ended up putting them in Phantom Menace. And then, of course, like you're saying, it just convolutes everything. It's neat. It's cool. Yeah. And I love that they did that. But you
can't think about it too much.
Continuity of stuff. No, you can't. You can't, because like you're saying, like, okay, if they share a universe, then why does Elliot have these toys? You know, that's Boba Fett or whatever. And I don't know, but it's kind of fun. It's fun. I love when movies do that. I love
it's fun
when just different things share universes. It just makes it fun. And I think that's what's so fun about, like, you know, watching stuff from, you know, MCU or whatever, because you can pick up little things like, oh, this character was in that movie, or they reference this in there, you know, and things like that. But
and the best is whenever they'll plant the Easter egg in a movie, and then like 10 years later in another movie it pays off.
Just the forethought that goes into that is incredible. So, you know, the other connection this has is sort of a spiritual connection, but like watching this, if you, this is clearly, I guess this goes into how much this has impacted pop culture, because this movie clearly was inspiration for Stranger Things in a lot of ways. And the Duffer Brothers will tell you, like, there's a ton of 80s movies and things that they've used, but like the beginning of when you first see Elliot and his brother, they're with his brother's friends, they're playing D&D in the kitchen there, and you know, eating pizza and all that. And what's the first thing that we really see in Stranger Things? We see the boys playing Dungeons and Dragons in the basement, you know, and then we've got the classic E.T. flying on the bike with Elliot on it. And there, of course, there's that scene with the kids in Stranger Things where the kids are riding their bikes, getting away from the G-Men and all that. And I just love, I think that's why I love this movie so much, is because...
Although they didn't fly, she threw that Jeep or that van up, right?
11 didn't need to, you know, she didn't need to fly. She just... Yeah. But that's what I love so much about this movie. It just, it had such a strong impact on just pop culture. Like it's a completely timeless movie that I don't think it will never be a movie that ages, I think, if that makes any sense. Like, of course, the technology and stuff in the movie, like, you know, that you're seeing, it takes place in the 80s, but I feel like it's really just one of those timeless classics that's always going to be relevant. I don't know. What do you think?
That's something I'm surprised by that they, and I'm happy with, is you talking about it aging and it not aging, but the special effects, the practical effects are what makes it timeless. The special effects are what makes it show its age. Whenever that spaceship takes off in the end, it looks horrible. But I do appreciate that they have not gone back in and rendered over that with some CGI or something like that. They've left it the way it is because that is a product of its time. And I think that it should reflect that. And then I'm going to bring it back to Star Wars for just one question for you. And that is E.T. tapping into the Force? Is that where his power comes from?
I've heard this before. I've heard that he's like a
Have
Jedi
you?
or like he's training to be a Jedi or something like that. And no, do I think that? No. Do I like the
Wow.
idea? You betcha.
The idea
I
of it?
like the
Yeah.
idea. he would make
Because I gotta say, for a guy with little stubby legs, he runs
Jedi.
really quick.
Yeah, he does. He does.
He would.
But you know, like you were saying with like practical effects and stuff, you know, that was a guy in a suit that was doing that. I think they may have used some animatronics, but there was a guy that was in a suit playing ET
For the head.
And was he just for the head?
Yeah, I think the head, and then like the hands are like whenever you do wide shots, his hands are extended, and then whenever they're close up, it's somebody behind him with longer arm, like because he's like a little person, and then he doesn't have arms that are that long, obviously. But or maybe they found somebody that got chopped off at the knees. I don't know.
Maybe. So I watched this with Harper a while back. She loved it. Do you remember like Bruce and Taylor? Did they like it when they first watched it, or what were kind of their feelings on it? Do you remember?
So we brought it up with them. I think it was one of the big anniversaries, probably 5 years ago, and watched it with both of them. Bruce, Taylor was bored by it, and she put up with it, but she didn't really like it. And Bruce seemed like he was bored with it. He came in and out, played toys, and like wasn't really paying much attention. But he talks about it, and I think for him, it's all about like the parts with ET, and then everything else he checked out on. Like he just didn't care, didn't want to watch it. And but he did really get into it, so much so that we had to go find him a red hoodie so he could be Elliot. Just for the weekends or whenever he felt like it. And so he wore this red hoodie for like 6 months to a year and was just like, it was all about like ET, and like he had like a little ET doll. And in fact, I think it was about a year after we'd seen it, we went and did Universal, and he wanted to go ride the ET ride really bad. Like that was like on his bucket list of things to do. That was near the top. And so we went and rode the ET ride. Now, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've never been to Universal, right?
No, I'm not.
No. So yeah, we rode the ride, and the ride, I believe, and Bruce was telling me this because he is obsessed with roller coasters and theme parks, and he watches YouTube videos about roller coasters and theme parks and old theme parks and the history of theme parks and their rides and where they come from and all this other stuff. And he was telling us all about how this ride, the ET ride, was supposed to be a bridge between the first ET movie and the sequel that they were developing but never got made. And so the ride is supposed to kind of connect the two movies. And it's like, I want to say the ride is, if I remember correctly, because it's been a few years, you're trying to escape the G-men that are coming after you through the forest, and then you get on the spaceship and you take off and you head back to ET's homeworld, and I think you get to see the spaceship and part of the homeworld, if I remember correctly. I could be mixing it up with a different ride. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I've never delved into it as deep as he does, so I don't know how much. You know, I'm sure somebody out there knows more than I do about these two things, so I'm going to choose to believe what he's told me about these, because I don't know any better.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it kind of surprised me a little bit that they at least. Yeah, like you're saying, Bruce picked up on more of it than you realized when you were watching. It kind of surprised me that Taylor was kind of bored with it. I don't know. I always kind of felt like this is one of those movies that
I told him I was going to
most
rewatch
kids
it this
just
weekend.
into.
I asked him if he wanted to watch it with me, and he was like, "Nah." So he didn't watch it with me this week.
And maybe it's just our age. Maybe it's us. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know.
So would
Nostalgia's
you
I
put
guess.
this? It is. Would you put this in the upper echelon of 80s movies?
Oh, I feel like there are 2, maybe 3 categories of movies as far as like movies from your personal past. And there are the movies that you watch 1,000 times. There are the movies that you've seen a handful of times but are precious to you. And then there are just the movies that everybody's seen. And I feel like this falls in the second one. This is one that I've seen a few times, and it does hold a special place, but it's not something I'm going to watch regularly or rewatch a lot, if that makes a whole lot of sense.
I guess, I've seen this movie several times, and I'm always down for watching it if it's on, or somebody says, "Hey, you want to watch E.T.?" and which, admittingly isn't like, it's not an everyday occurrence. But yeah, I would probably fall into that category too. I don't know. I'd like to think it's a movie that I would just be able to sit there and rewatch, and I guess I could. Like, I don't. Every time I watch it, I'm never bored with it. Like, I'm always really enjoying it. But there's, I guess maybe there's other movies that I would probably.
But if you rewatch it 100 times, you'd probably reach a point where you're like, eh.
Yeah, but doesn't take away from how good the movie is. Doesn't take away from just the effect it had on cinema, I think, and on just I think that when home video. I think of home video, and when I think of blockbuster movies, I know that I said that Jaws was technically like the first blockbuster movie, but when I think of like a blockbuster movie, I think of E.T. I think of that coming out in the summer and just people flocking to the theaters to see this movie. I think the second and third time and all that.
I think you got to remember the time. Like, there was nothing like this at the time that it came out. There were aliens in movies before that were big-headed humanoids coming at you with laser guns, there to destroy, conquer, and take over. This is probably the first big screen major movie that featured an alien that was friendly, that was a family friendly movie story, really, that everybody could enjoy.
And it really, I feel like you're right. It brought into, that's the wrong way of saying it. This movie came out, and there were several movies that came out after that in the 80s that had followed a very similar structure. Like, you had Mac and Me, you had Flight of the Navigator, you had Short Circuit. Like, things were just, they were like, hey, this is E.T., but it's not E.T., but it followed the same sort of sci-fi.
E.T. with a robot. E.T. with structure. A spaceship. Yeah.
Yep.
It's like the original Die Hard on a boat, Die Hard on a plane, or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Just with less cussing and less blood and more love.
Yeah. For the family.
Yes. So, do you, I don't know, do you have any final thoughts on E.T.?
I do. I've actually got 2 questions that I think we should try and answer. And the first one will probably be an easy one, but to me, it didn't seem so. The beers that E.T. drank, were those the moms? Because whenever she came home and she found the cans and she kind of sniffed them, she was like, ew, like she didn't, like it wasn't her thing. And honestly, she didn't seem like the kind of mom that's going to come home and crack open a cold one. If anything, she's going to have like a glass of wine or something, right? Like who did the beers belong to? Because the older brother wasn't old enough to be getting beers. So who did the beers go to? Was the mom seeing somebody, or maybe there's an uncle that came around for those? Like, what's the story with that? What's your thoughts?
Maybe what? So I hadn't thought about that, but as you're saying it, does it tell us how long ago that their dad left? Because I wonder if maybe they were his beers and she just never cleaned them out of the fridge.
Yeah, maybe it's pretty recent. Like, and you're right.
Maybe he was an alcoholic or something like that, and she just didn't want to touch him. She didn't want to have anything to do with it, and she just didn't have the ability to mentally to just clean the fridge out. I don't know. What do you think?
Okay. Conspiracy theory time here, or alternate theory, or fan theory, whatever you want to call it. Maybe the dad is on the run from the law enforcement, and that's why whenever the law enforcement came down on him, they were kind of freaked out a little bit. Like he just had to break out so quickly, and that's why she cried every time that Mexico was mentioned, because he's in Mexico trying to outrun the law. And she's like, he doesn't even like Mexico.
Yeah. I like that idea. That's exactly what I was going to say. That explains the Mexico. Let's run with that theory. We are starting that internet theory right here on this podcast takes tokens. You heard it first.
That's right. Dad's on the run. He's not a bastard. He's just on the run. All right, so then that brings me to my second question, and that is, did E.T. fake his death when he's laying there on the table? Because he came back like nothing had happened. Like he was like, hey, I'm here. It's cool. Don't worry, Elliot. Everything's okay. I'm good. I just want to go home. So you think E.T. maybe faked his death to get the G-Men away?
I think I'm gonna give a completely cheesy answer here. I think it was the bond of friendship that brought him back. Because he's an empath. I think like he's dying. His heart grew he's there. He's dead, and it grew so big because Elliot was so sad that he was dead, and he comes back to life, and he's like, you know what, kid. I'm going to come back for you.
Yeah. Well, it was Elliot finally told E.T. that he loved him, and then that's whenever his heart started beating again. So I'm inclined to go with that theory as well. And I'm going to bring up one more thing that kind of bugged me.
That's the power of love.
There you go. That's the power of love. And then one more thing from the beginning, whenever they're sitting down to eat dinner, like the family, not playing D&D, but I think the next night, and they're all sitting down to eat dinner. They're eating hamburgers without buns. Is that what they're eating? We don't have a screen grab up in front of us or anything like that. But do you remember seeing what they were eating?
Oh no,
it looked like hamburgers without buns.
I don't remember that. Have you never eaten a hamburger without a bun?
I just remember seeing it looks really weird. I've never eaten a hamburger without a bun. That's so weird to me.
Oh my gosh.
I guess maybe
we do that.
Maybe
we do that often.
Definitely not a preference. Really?
The reason we do it, it's not out of like choice a lot of times. It's because we make hamburgers and we realize we don't have buns. And I'm somebody that like Mindy's like, well, just put it on like sandwich bread, and I'm like, that's not what sandwich bread's for. Sandwich bread, it's got to be. If I'm gonna have a hamburger on bread, it's gonna be on a hamburger bun, and if you can't have that, then I guess it's just gonna be a naked hamburger.
I get the brioche buns at the grocery store whenever we make hamburgers. Although they only come in a 4-pack.
Oh, yeah.
So whenever I make 6 hamburgers, I got 2 of them that don't have buns, or I get 2 4-packs and then I got 2 buns that go to waste. So,
yeah.
But that's how that goes, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's all I've got. Any closing thoughts for you?
You know, other than everything I've said, it's just one of those movies that, like I said, I said it before, it's just timeless, and I think it's always going to be timeless. And even with the special effects, like you were saying, that's part of just what it is. Don't change that stuff. Like you don't want them to change, special effects. And I don't know, you're watching, there wasn't many special effects in Casablanca, but that's the only thing that's coming to my head right now. Like you're watching those old movies, that's what they are. You go in knowing this is what they are. The special effects aren't going to be great. I'm here for the story. And this is, I feel like it really has like some really deep underlying themes that you don't pick up on as a kid. You pick up on it as an adult. And I think that's one thing that just makes this movie timeless, is that it's, you at every age you watch it, I think you can pick something else up that resonates with you. Like, as a parent, you can see like through the eyes of their mother, like she's trying to just hold everything together. Her husband's just left and she's, trying to take care of the family. She's stuck, doing that. And it's, that's not something I picked up on as a kid. So yeah, I think it's just, it's timeless. And the only thing that this movie is missing is an appearance from Corey Feldman. And another shout out, Corey, if you're out there. This is our invite. Come on the show. We'll talk about any movie, anything you want. Could have been, should have been.
Right,
at least the older brother.
Let's see here. Corey Feldman. It just says born June 16th. It doesn't give a year.
Oh.
Well, what was he doing in what was it? When did this one come out? 1982 is when we said?
82. So they probably would have shot it in 81 or so.
82. I don't recognize anything that he was in around that time. How to Eat Like a Child, The Love Boat, Father Murphy, Open All Night. Yeah, I don't recognize any of that. I don't know. I don't have a point of reference for him. Still the Beeve. He was in Still the Beeve. Go figure. Cheers. When was the first major appearance by him? Gremlins, 1984. So 2 years younger than he was in Gremlins. That could have been. That could have been Elliot.
And he didn't, because
Elliot was only 9 or 10.
Yeah, Henry Thomas wasn't that old when they did this. And I think looking at Corey Feldman in Gremlins, he looked like he was probably 13 or 14 in Gremlins. So he totally could have played Elliot.
Yeah. Could have. I think he could have played Elliot.
What could have been?
But then Henry Thomas wouldn't have had much of a career now, would he? Because I don't know that. I can't remember much else that Henry Thomas has been in.
So Henry Thomas, the only other thing I've seen him in is Netflix did a miniseries, Fall of the House of Usher, that came out last year that he was in. And it's really good. It actually has Mark Hamill in it too, that does a fantastic job, as he's like the family's Usher family's lawyer, and he's just kind of this ruthless guy, and he does a fantastic job. So you should watch it if you have not seen that. I bet you and Allison would really like that. But yeah, he's in it. So there's a reason to maybe watch it. So
looking it up, Corey Feldman is 2 months older than Henry Thomas. Totally could have played the part. Age.
There we go. If we could go back in time, Corey.
If we could go back in time. But, invitation still stands. Yeah. Come on anytime.
It does, man.
Talk about whatever movie you want.
In all seriousness.
That's right. That's right.
So what are we doing? What are we doing next week?
Before we wrap up this conversation, you were talking about movie going back, the directors, specifically George Lucas, going back and futzing with movies, like putting in digital overlays and stuff like that. Have you heard of Project 4K 77?
No.
Okay. You got to check out Project 4K 77. It is this group that has gone through and gotten their hands on original film reels of Star Wars, the first 3 movies, and they have scanned them, and they have remastered the movie as it was the original film print. So it's completely unaltered. It's the original film print, the original run of the movie that went to the theaters, and all they've done is just kind of cleaned it up a little bit, gotten like the little scratches and smudges and stuff like that off of there, and remastered the audio, like cleaned that up, and so it's just the straight original theatrical experience. I've never watched them, but I have the DVDs, which they put the original release on, I believe. And that's the closest I've come to watching the original theatrical release. But I've wanted to go and download these because they've scanned them and it's in 4K. So it's the original run in true 4K, unaltered, which would be really fun to watch. So I think if I go back and whenever we go back to watch Star Wars eventually, I'm going to watch that version of it.
I mean, there's some things like I'm trying to think off the top of my head what like the lightsaber, like Luke's lightsaber in the first one, they make the blade a little more brilliant. And so I do think with some of the updates that they've done, like there's some quality of life updates that are okay. I didn't like the extra, like, let's add this CG character in the scene. I think they did it with Jabba the Hutt, those scenes. Yeah.
Jabba the Hutt, because originally Jabba the Hutt was like my man. He was just a guy. Yeah. But that's where I'm like, I want to see how it was originally intended to be watched.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out.
I thought that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think I bring that up because I just saw something where they finished the last of the 3. So now they have all 3 of them done, as it were. And as long as you own the movies, you have a right to check these out, apparently.
Okay.
But you still got to jump through a couple hoops to get to them.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But Project 4K 77 if you're interested.
I'll have to check that out, definitely.
So next week, or next episode, you were asking, and let's do RoboCop. We'll do RoboCop.
Yes. Sounds good to me. I can't wait.
All right. So with that, we've reached another checkpoint, my friends. Remember, sharing is caring. Reviews help a lot. And get those tokens ready. Until next time.
We'll see you then.
This podcast takes tokens is a Clay Street production.